Chapter 11, September 26th. I decided to try something this year that allowed me to make a difference without using my Descendant abilities. I guess I'm not surprised it backfired. I wanted to help people and make a little money to put away, so signing up to be a tutor seemed like an easy exception to remaining invisible. I never expected the one person who remembers me to sign up for after-school tutoring. What are the odds he'd get assigned to me, and why does he look at me like I'm the missing piece, the solution to his problems? I'm probably just the beginning of his problems, because bad luck swirls around me like a rotten egg smell, and I told him I was a descendant of angels. His face was priceless. No one would believe such a crazy story, but it felt so good to be honest for once. I didn't expect him to believe me, but it also hurt that he didn't. There's something about Treadon and his intense gaze that goes past the shell I've created on the outside, that drills into my very soul, that made me feel like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I should probably walk away, but I want to see him again, even if all we talk about is math. I guess it's up to him if he comes back. I walked out of the school with the urge to hum a tune my dad used to sing. He had an amazing voice and used it to serenade my mom. I remember her smile creeping onto her face, no matter how mad she tried to stay at him. Before he was a guardian, my dad was a lead singer in a band. I could never imagine it, my dad, standing on stage with a microphone. But when he sang me to sleep, when he hummed a tune while washing the dishes, I could almost imagine the dreams he'd given up, serving the cause of the Descendants. But he chose that life. He chose my mom when they were both old enough to make that decision. I ran away before I learned everything. Imagine leaving home with only a second-grade education. There's no one to ask what happens if someone bonds too early, or is bonded without a choice. Treadon Nelson. Treadon worked through the next few days in a daze. She hadn't expected him to believe her. He didn't believe her. It was impossible. She was messing with him. There was no such thing as angels, unless there were. And if there were, then he'd just found one. Treadon let that sink in, without letting himself fully believe it. If he had found her, and she really was what she said, was it possible there were other people who knew, who wanted to hurt or capture or use angels? It was hard to even think the word. He couldn't deny the fear he'd seen in her the first time he'd met her. Whether she was descended from angels or not, Eleanor, Agarwal, believed she was in danger. Someone grabbed him from behind, and Treadon whirled, fists up, ready for a fight. "Whoa!" Jaren put his hands up. "Still wanting to find someone? Thought you'd had enough of that in the locker room." "Sorry, I'm a little jumpy." "What happened in the locker room?" Rachel walked up behind Jaren, flipping her long ponytail behind her shoulder. She wore her school sweats and hoodie and still managed to walk like she'd stepped onto a fashion runway. Rachel Sampaio was the picture of believing in herself. Treadon felt a sting of jealousy. Apparently, believing in anything was a weakness of his. "What are you two still doing here?" "It's late." Treadon walked with them to the parking lot. Normal people, normal conversations. It felt good. Jaren was helping with some posters for student council. "I made him paint all the letters," Rachel said. "Yeah. I worked and she talked," Jaren said. "That's what directors do. Besides, you have the best handwriting of anyone I know," Rachel teased. Jaren stopped walking and wagged a finger in Rachel's face. "Don't ever say that again. I've got my manly reputation to maintain here." Treadon let their friendly banter wash away the anxiety and adrenaline from the last few days. The fight in the locker room, Coach Bracken's threat to cut him for fighting, Eleanor, and angels. "How is tutoring?" Rachel asked. "You seem kind of distracted. Was she nice?" "It was interesting. She was good at math." "Uh-oh, haven't I warned you about tutor-client relationships?" Jaren joked. "It was the girl I told you about after the first game." "You mean the invisible one that hit you?" "Yes, that one. She's my tutor, and she's not invisible. She just doesn't like people to notice her." And they didn't. Why? Was that proof that she was an angel? Or was it a weird coincidence? "Good. I like her already," Rachel said. "No, it's more than that. She's alone and wants to stay that way for some reason. But I bet you know her, Rachel. You know everybody. Her name is Eleanor Agarwal." "Eleanor? That doesn't sound familiar." "But I don't know everybody." "Yes, she does." Jaren tossed his keys in the air and caught them. "You know I can get you a girlfriend that isn't imaginary, right?" Before Treadon could respond, Jaren's phone rang with the ringtone of a song saying, "Money, money, money." Jaren pulled his phone out of his pocket, and Treadon saw that the caller was labeled Dad. "That's your dad's ringtone?" Treadon asked. "That song is from the 80s. Jaren made an offended face as he retorted, "The 80s were amazing. I'm bringing them back." He touched the screen to answer. Treadon realized he hadn't stopped reading people as Rachel's shift in demeanor left impressions on his mind. She was upset. No, she had a burning dislike for Xander Calivan. That seemed very opposite to Rachel's personality. She was accepting and kind to everyone. He glanced at Jaren. The personality switch Treadon had noticed earlier that day was all the way up. The facade he put on at school was a dress rehearsal. Even on the phone, Jaren put on a dazzling smile and lilted his voice for optimal casualness. A powerful smokescreen that hid something even Treadon couldn't see. "Hey, Dad." Jaren turned away, putting distance between them while he talked. Treadon glanced at Rachel. He wanted to ask, but her face had closed off, a wall going up that wasn't that different from Ellie's. 2 days ago, he never would have pushed. He would have been afraid of her reaction, afraid she'd think he was weird. But he wasn't happy sitting back and ignoring other people anymore. "What's going on with Jaren's dad?" "What are you talking about?" "I saw you guys talking in the hall earlier. He seemed stressed. You seemed aggravated." Rachel held his eyes for a few seconds. He saw the questions there, the concern that he was acting strange. But she shrugged and answered him. "I've been working evenings at an online news station. We're always looking for stories, and they want to run one on XC Energy." Rachel paused. Her stance suggested excitement about the opportunity. The wrinkle between her eyes said she was conflicted, a concern for Jaren, and then that twitch in her jaw, anger. What good was being able to read people if it just left more questions? Is that good? "I found some things from the past, documents that had been redacted, questions that were never answered, some things that might cause problems for Jaren's dad." Rachel's emotions teetered back and forth so quickly. Treadon couldn't get a read on her. There was so much behind her simple statement that Treadon felt dizzy trying to work them out. Jaren hung up the phone and came back over to them. "Great news. Calivan Sr. has a free evening and wants to take us out for dinner. Are you both in?" Rachel bit the inside of her cheek. "I wish I could, but I've got work." She glanced at Treadon. It was a question. A favor. "Yeah, I'll go." Treadon had never met the famous Xander Calivan, owner of XC Energy, business tycoon. 5 years ago, he'd been featured on the cover of Money magazine. Even with all the money and notoriety, Jaren chose to go to the same school as Rachel. There were layers inside layers between Rachel and Jaren's friendship. Treadon had never chosen to try to see through. What would change if he tried to pry now? He wanted to help people, but seeing more than people wanted him to see, accidentally digging up private experiences, that wasn't the kind of person he wanted to be. "I'll see you tomorrow. Let me know how it goes." Rachel whispered, touching Treadon's arm. "Take care of him. His father is a shark." She walked away. She couldn't know about Treadon's ability to read people, but her steps showed her confidence in Treadon. She wanted him to learn more about XC Energy for her and protect Jaren from what he found. "I still think that's a lame ringtone," Treadon said as they reached Jaren's car. Treadon waited for Jaren to push unlock. Jaren jumped over the door and settled in the front seat. "Everyone has a perfect ringtone." Jaren fiddled with the fob, not pressing unlock yet. "Oh yeah? What's mine?" "When you call, I hear the theme song from Rudy. You know, the movie about the kid that tried as hard as he could, but was never very good?" Jaren raised an eyebrow at him. Then he pressed unlock. "You're lucky you're on the other side of an electrocuting car." Treadon opened the door and climbed in, hating that Jaren's words hit a little too close to home.